Hello, and welcome to A Soulful Revolution, a podcast at the intersection of spiritual transformation and social change. I'm Hannah Curtis, your co host, mother, mentor, agitator, friend, and sincerely curious person.
And I'm Lauren Grubaugh Thomas, a priest, writer, spouse, and twin mama, asking questions, telling stories, and always in the business of listening deeply. And today we are interviewing sisters Layla, Aussy, and Dora. Layla Ali Rabih-Ziegler is a connector and caregiver at heart, weaving together nonprofit leadership, entrepreneurship, and family life to create spaces of compassion and integrity. Aussy Levi is a seasoned attorney and advocate whose 25 years in human rights, workforce development, and women's health reflect her lifelong commitment to equity and justice. And Dora Rabih Griffin is a Palestinian activist, mother, and organizer whose work in liberation, storytelling, and community care is rooted in resilience and love. Ladies, it is an absolute joy and privilege to have all three of you with us on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Big welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
you.
for
It's
having
good to be
us.
here.
Well, we always start off with a check-in question to be able to ground ourselves in the moment that we're in. And so we'll start by asking it, Hannah and I, and answering it, and then we'll turn it over to the three of you. Hannah, what is the state of your soul in this season of struggle for justice?
As frequent listeners might know, I am in seminary right now, which is graduate school for theology. And though I'm at the very end of this school week, right before break, I had the privilege today of taking a workshop with the incredible Kazu Haga. And I know exactly.
Wow, chills.
Exactly.
Everybody was fangirling hard in that moment. That was so lovely.
Yes. So I'm so glad that I get to share this because it filled my cup in such an incredible way. A truly captivating speaker who is so grounded and relatable and passionate and committed. And so to get to listen to an interview with him, a lecture of his, and then engage in a workshop with him, I just got like a 1, 2, 3, I'm full up. And so gratitude not only to Kazu Haga for that, but man, to those engaged in the incredibly difficult work of nonviolence. Today, I find myself inspired and humbled by that work and deeply recommitted. So how about you, Lauren?
I too am feeling hope today coming out of a meeting, which is not always how meetings go. I had a chance today to be in a meeting with faith leaders and some local politicians. And they were folks whose views, the politicians were folks whose views are ones that diverge from mine in some pretty significant ways. And we were able to come to the table and have some really productive conversation about the ways in which vulnerable members of our community, especially immigrants right now, are being targeted, and how do we build communities that are truly safe for everyone. And so I think I just got a special dose this morning of reminder that politics happens on the ground, face to face, in ways that are really hard to replicate at scale. but this is how we build change, is through relationship. It's through being face to face with people. And so that gave me a little dose of hope for today that I'm carrying into the ongoing struggle that we're all facing in the world for justice and for real liberation. There's three amazing guests. Dora, I invite you, as the person that I first made contact with, the friend that now has connected me to your wonderful sisters, to share for you what is your soul experiencing in this moment of struggle for justice.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, the phrase, if you will, that comes to mind is sabr, which is an Islamic phrase and concept. And when it's translated to the English language, it often just means patience. However, sabr is all-encompassing, and it includes patience and perseverance and steadfastness and a true belief and trust in the divine's will. And so I think that with everything that we are witnessing happening in the world right now, both domestic and abroad, I think it's so easy to go down these rabbit holes of why. But when I remember this phrase, it really gives me a feeling of peace. And so as quickly as I can fall down those rabbit holes, I immediately come out of it by just reminding myself of this phrase. So it's something that I almost on a daily basis try to practice.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that word.
Yeah.
Layla, what about you?
I would say that my soul just hurts. Um, I feel like I just want justice for the whole world. I want love and peace, and it seems impossible at times, but I remain hopeful.
And Aussy, what about you?
So I think for me, the best way to describe it is like a roller coaster. It seems that our soul is going through this ride of, okay, no, it's okay, it's not okay. Something else is coming up. So I guess for me, it's both heavy and I also feel like more awakened in the last few years but yet there's a deep grief because we don't know how to really resolve it and such. And also witnessing so many things that we haven't had the privilege years ago to witness, and now it's so clearly in front of us, and it just feels like there is not enough that one can do. So feeling in a state of that seems like justice, it seems like to be latent, and you want to have transformation, but it's just slow moving, so it makes it like literally a roller coaster ride.
One thing that I find fascinating before we get into the three of you all as sisters is the way that Lauren, you and Dora met. So before we jump in too deep, can you all just share that?
Yeah, Dora, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to actually. It's a story that I've shared multiple times just because it was such a fun moment for me personally. We were actually at the splash pad at Clement Park, I believe, and I was with my sister Layla. We had my brother and his family were visiting, and so they were in town. So nephews, nieces, my children, we were all playing, and I was actually wearing a PCRF jersey, which I typically I try to wear something that showcases my Palestinian identity at all times. It's a piece of me that I carry at all times, and it's kind of a conversation starter or opener in a lot of ways. And so lo and behold, Lauren recognized the PCRF logo, and she was like, did you, was there a tournament here or where? Because it said, I think it says PCRF 3-on-3. And
which is the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so she recognized right away what that was. And so I told her that my sister and I and some old high school teammates had just played in the 3-on-3 tournament and had raised significant funds for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. And yeah, that just opened up a whole conversation about different books and different authors. And she informed me of her friend Layla, who's an author as well. And so yeah, just this whole conversation. And it was obvious very quickly that we weren't going to be able to fit it all into one conversation. And so we exchanged contact information and just kind of went from there. But yeah, definitely a beautiful moment that I shared with all my friends and family member after the fact.
I think it's such a lovely blessing to be able to wear your identity with the pride that you do, because of course there's people who don't receive that well, or don't treat people well who are especially wearing their Palestinian identity on their sleeve. And it's such a point of connection and hope for so many people, for Palestinians and for people in solidarity alike. And for us, it led to this new but beautiful and growing friendship for which I'm so grateful. And I'm just so delighted, Dora, that you were willing to be on the show and share some of your own story, and that your sisters have graciously agreed to be in conversation too, because as Hannah said, we're so curious to hear more about the relationship that the three of you share, that represents so many different layers of identities. So I'll turn it back over to Hannah to open us up with that question.
So as we mentioned briefly, your family, the three of you all, represent an intersection that is profoundly interfaith and intercultural. Muslim, Palestinian, Christian, and Jewish roots all kind of intersecting and coming together. Tell us more, each of you, or however you all want to. Tell us about your heritage and how it's shaped your lived reality and your spiritual lives, and also the way that you see justice in the world.
I'm going to volunteer Aussy to start with this one. She's, out of the three of us, she was the one that was born in the Holy Land, so I'm going to let her take the lead.
Okay.
Wow.
So, well, thank you, Dora. I appreciate you putting me on the spot. Yes, I was born in the Holy Land. I was born in Jerusalem, and I feel that it's a different kind of way of looking about justice. And certainly because even especially when we as a family went all together to the Middle East, the experiences have been different of what I recalled being there before leaving and coming to the States. Just going back into the background, my father married my mother, who was a Polish Jew who was immigrated from Poland after World War II. Pretty much did not know not one word in Arabic. He knew, my father did know Hebrew because he was serving as a police officer for, technically at the time was a Palestinian Israeli force. And so they were able to communicate. He brought to her an element of family that she never had when they got married. My father's side of the family has a large family, and obviously if it doesn't, you can definitely tell Lauren and Hannah that we are very interconnected. We are very close. Family is very important. It's rooted in our blood, in our systems. And for her, I think she was craving that, especially after the loss of her family and literally being in an orphanage. So my experience was a little bit different, kind of looking like my family members, because my dad has obviously you look at all of us, we have very, very strong traits. But the fact that my mom looked very European and such was a little bit kind of like an outcasting. So then it became to be an element as we talk about injustices as us and them type of thing. So there was a silent kind of separation. Also, the fact is that as children, you don't understand the difference between I'm not an enemy. I want to be a part of this family. I'm sorry that my mom is different, right? But we spoke Arabic as our first language, but our second language was particularly with her was a mixture of Hebrew and Polish. So just for us to communicate in that essence, our household was a little bit different than my cousins and my uncles and so on. So moving a few years later, where my mom and my dad divorced, then actually we had to go to the side of the enemy side when my mom converted back to Judaism. So there was a whole entire conversion aspect. So then we did not know, we understood somewhat of Hebrew, but we had to learn a new language. And now we are playing in the playground with other kids and not having to identify who we are because we did not want to be taken as enemies, right? So we are playing, growing up knowing that they're the enemies, us not saying anything because they might think we are the enemies. It was really a struggle for a while until we kind of found our footprint per se. So it just kind of made it understandable that we kind of had to kind of become like, in a way, like the UN, very, very much as children going, okay, we don't say this, we say this, we kind of back here, but we still had very strong relationship with my dad's side of the family. So we would see them on a weekly basis. Our language became very strong in Hebrew. We became Israeli citizens. So that created also another element and another layer where it was kind of separating us from our family, where they had restrictions and we didn't, even though we were in a side of the land that was literally almost 42 minutes away, where I had, as an individual, just merely was born 42 minutes away, I had more access than my cousins who continuously lived there, on. So there was injustices from the get-go. So belonging and honoring humanity was very confusing as a child. but also allows to see things through a different lens versus an understanding and educating. So as children, we're educating, no, we're not that way. No, we're not this way. No, or you have a completely a different side of my other sister who is very strong. Is like, I don't want to get involved. This is not important. So you get one element of investment and another element of, I'm just going to ignore the reality of injustices. So earning peace and dignity and growing up within that was very challenging. So it put us into a different perspective when we came to the state, because it became to be a place of neutrality where you just had to evaluate, where do I belong? What does this look like? And then I will pass it back to Dora and Layla, where we had to be, at that point, we were introduced to the Christian side of things, even though we saw it in the Holy Land, right? Jerusalem is the monotheistic part of the world where you have three faiths right there. And then then their mom was introduced to my dad got married to their mom, and now we have to literally learn about Christianity. So it became to be a different level and a layer of kind of understanding the Christian integration of Islam and Judaism. Long-winded answer.
It's a phenomenal answer, and I have so many questions. So we'll turn it over to either Dora or Layla. Let's hear more.
Yeah, I'll just add on when she started talking about like the Christianity, Islam, Judaism. I always make a joke about it, like the three major religions of the world under one roof. And it was honestly, like, I would say it was the most beautiful part of our upbringing, sometimes confusing part. But it was really beautiful and allowed us to be very open-minded and accepting of all religions and of all people. So I view it as a blessing for the most part.
Yeah, and I'll add to Layla's, all three major religions under one roof. I used to joke and say thousands of years of war living, coexisting under one roof together, and just trying to lighten it up for people that just truly didn't understand. Because when you grow up in the diaspora, when you're, shaped by the world views of the West, we were in real time living what we were being told couldn't happen. We were celebrating Christmas and Easter alongside Ramadan and Eid. And, it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always easy. As children, yes, very, very confusing, but we did it. And we are so blessed to have had that experience. And I think that it has truly shaped the way in which we show up in the world and that we view the world, and that we're able to see individuals as humans first and foremost and find the similarities between one another versus the fear about, differences, because again, we grew up in this household with all of these differences, be it language, religion, culture, and you just accept and you grow and you learn from it. So definitely feel very privileged to have had the experience that we did.
Hi, listener. Hannah here. I wanted to offer a moment to pause partway through our conversation. If you will, join me in a bit of a guided meditation, just to check in for our bodies and spirits. Close your eyes, if that feels comfortable to you, and consider what you've heard already through this conversation. Consider how that feels in your body, if it's something you can name, and if it is, think about it as if it were something you could hold. I invite you to consider this thing that you're holding perhaps like a piece of jewelry that you're wearing around your neck. It might be something that's new, precious, expensive, rudimentary, dense, however you might describe it. And take a moment to interact with that piece of jewelry. Would you like to straighten it on your neck? Adjust it somehow? Do you want to take it off? Put it down? Are you comfortable carrying what you're holding? through the rest of this conversation. What will it mean if you do, and what will it mean if you don't? I invite you to consider these things and make a decision that reflects what you need in this moment. We'll carry on with our conversation, but for now, I just want to say, I'm glad you're here. We were doing what they said couldn't be done.
I don't know exactly how I worded it, but that's what came to mind. Like just being raised in the West and with Western ideals and media, saying that these types of cultures or religions are, typically pitted against each other. And I'm like, I have this Christian mom from the Midwest and this Palestinian Arab father, Muslim, very traditional Muslim father, and I'm watching it happen, yet I'm living in this world, and I was school age and after 9/11, like all these things that just weren't really resonating. But again, we were living that truth in our home every day. So
that's incredible. I love that.
Thanks.
And Aussy, you had something to add.
Interfaith is a really an interesting concept. And I think that one of the things that our world had brought, for example, to me is understanding the monotheistic religions, yet I stayed, and one of my processes is actually went and searched somewhere else that's spoken to me. So a lot of times, when you ask Layla, you ask Dora where they stand faith-wise, their faith-wise is a little bit different than myself. I went into the structure of spirituality, very strong into communities that are very well acceptance of all things and that are all welcome, right? Because we're still having, and I want to make sure that, not to say that interfaith does not accept everybody, but there is a level of understanding that there's still a lot of education. Judaism very strongly does not accept certainly some part of society, and we see that consistently, except, we know what our Old Testament and New Testament says, welcome everyone, but we still as human beings look at it a little bit different. Christianity does the same thing, and as well as Islam. So for me, it still always has been a struggle to find my truth, right, of where it is. So for me, it had taught me that not to eliminate our monotheistic world and our monotheistic religion and faiths, but actually encompassing others that have made more sense to me, that are very much welcoming, and where interfaith is, and I sit on some interfaith boards, which makes a lot of sense because, there needs to be exchange, and this is a really very strong topic because we try, and especially we talk in the sense of God told me so, and we see some actions being done in the word of God into how we treat people, as well as these wars that we're seeing. It is political. We need to make sure that it is political. It has nothing to do with God. And God does not destroy children, does not destroy lands, does not destroy, and I think that is very, and especially with you two, Hannah and Lauren, coming from a very background of, theology and so on, those are very common mistakes that a lot of individuals that you guys will continue to having to educate, that all one, all powerful, whatever you want to describe, God, energy, and so on, does not create the element of humanity to kill or to execute or to, obviously, where we are heading into conversation with the genocide that's going on.
I find myself really curious, Aussy, as you say that, about the ways in which your sense of social responsibility was sharpened growing up in these environments with all the cultural, intercultural, interspiritual, interfaith tensions that existed. What are the ways that you have navigated this that have transformed your sense of spirituality? You've all spoken to that a bit, and I'm especially curious about how your sense of social responsibility has been sharpened as adults now existing in this world, where you see the ways that one soul way of thinking or of binary thinking can result in, and does result in, incredible violence, including and especially as we're talking about today in Palestine.
I'm going to go very macro, and I'm going to say that my sisters, both Layla and Dora, watching them, and I'm going to get emotional, teaching our nieces and nephews of what it is to live in a world that isn't just. So I would have to say that watching everything that's around us and watching them build a generation of awareness, of authenticity, that is so important. This is the next generation. This is a generation that's going to make things better, I'm hoping. And it is because of them being the great moms that they are, and the investment into showing the world what it is to look from a perspective of love. Sorry, probably on my medication.
Never apologize, please. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for offering that vulnerability. And thank you for naming that there is work for us to do in the present, and there is work for us to invest in on behalf of the future. And I always reference the James Baldwin quote, there's no such thing as other people's children. All children are
Yeah.
children. I think about that all the time, that I might be the mother to my children, but everyone has a responsibility to all of our children. And I want to also say thank you for naming that those of us who do the work of theology or theologizing with any number of people have a responsibility to educate, to speak truth, not just truth to power, but speak the truth. Tell the truth.
I actually wanted to kind of highlight something that Aussy said too. A lot of times, again, the conversations weren't easy. They still aren't easy. But growing up in the family with the different dynamics that we had, I've always been an observer. And so once you get to know me, I open up and, I talk a lot. But for the most part, I'm constantly observing. And so as a young child, I remember doing that. And I would hear my dad's theory, or, I would go to church with my mom, and different perspectives that I would get. And I was observing through this whole process, and at a pretty young age, I can recall speaking up and finding my voice and saying, no, religion doesn't teach these things. Religion, all the main religions teach love and, these moral obligations as human beings, how we show up in the world, or should show up in the world. And it's human beings who corrupt these religions or hide behind these religions and turn them into something that they're not. And so, especially in talking about a genocide, and when you think of the Jewish faith being synonymous with Zionism and the state of Israel, and just how detrimental that is to a beautiful faith, I've learned through my activism work that these things, these labels, this type of rhetoric, it's dangerous. And so something that I inherently kind of, like I said, I observed, I realized really early on. It's only allowed me to further engage in those conversations and teach from that perspective. And I grew up with my dad constantly talking about the Jewish, and don't ever tell me that people can't change, because I have a 78-year-old father who is very clear and specific now when he talks about it, and he says Zionism. And I've done interviews with him one-on-one, and it's like, yeah, we can't have these things be synonymous with each other, because they're not. So definitely wanted to highlight that point. And then also just say that I think growing up in the West, again, we were so privileged with the life that we had. And my first time going back to Palestine was a trip that Layla and I took together. And she had gone one trip before me. She had treated herself. It was a graduation trip that she got for herself after graduating college, because we always talked about doing it as a family growing up, and one thing or another would come up, and there's never peace in the Middle East. And so for someone like my mom, who was like, well, yeah, I want to go meet your family, but also get passports for everybody, and then something would erupt again. And so it was always just this back and forth. We never actually pulled the trigger and did the family trip that we talked about. So Layla went, that inspired me to go. Her and I went together. And then a few years later, we surprised my dad for his 75th birthday and took the entire family, grandchildren, spouses, and all. And we took a trip to both Jordan and Palestine. And that from that first trip to that second trip, just the different lens in which I was perceiving, the world around me. When you experience that type of injustice, like firsthand, when you see, like, first time I went to Palestine and in Anata, where my family lives, going in and out of the checkpoints and seeing how drastically different just the infrastructure was, and the amount of trash that was left to pile up. And first thing, human inklings like, why do our people have to be so dirty? Why can't they clean up after themselves? I never asked the questions. And by the second trip, again, through this completely different lens, and I can't even imagine, if and when I go back the next time, how different that will be. But you see the things, you learn to ask the questions, and then you realize that the systems that are in place and the powers that be, and how unjust it is. And when you experience that, me personally, I don't feel like I have the option to sit back or be quiet. This is the only way I know how to be. This is the only way I know how to teach my children. This is the only way I know how to create change and lasting change. So it definitely becomes this moral obligation, which is why I'm a huge advocate for people to get out and see the world and travel, and not just for the experiences, but so that you can widen that view and that perspective and learn to come, face every day with a sense of empathy and compassion and understanding for what other people live through.
I wonder what has been coming up for you as you've been listening, perhaps in regards to what it means to raise this next generation as people who are able to hold the tensions of difference and to do that with nonviolence. I wonder what has been coming up for you.
Yeah, thanks. So I can't tell you how proud I am to be raising a Palestinian son. I've always been very proud to be a Palestinian. So to see that bloodline running through generations, it's beautiful and powerful. Um, and I feel like being Palestinian and educating my children about their culture and ancestors helps bring awareness to the social injustices and hopefully shapes them to be a powerful voice for everyone. And honestly, I have to give a lot of thanks to Dora with this, because um, Dora and I kind of, I guess you can say, we switched our ways. I feel like when I was younger, I was always the one who was the speaker and getting in front of groups, and she made a comment about how she would sit back and just observe. That was not me. And now the roles have kind of reversed. She's getting out there and she's speaking up, and I'm kind of the observer now. So I've been learning a lot from her. She teaches me a lot on how to raise my son and to make sure that he, is the voice for the next generation. So that's been really beautiful to have her guidance through all of this. So.
I just feel the ties of family running through this whole conversation, and I feel so grateful to bear witness.
I would actually love to know, like, responding to what Lauren said, there is such a deep, obvious, palpable love, and familiarity does not express it, but that it is clear that these, Aussy, I think you said before, it's in our blood, it's in our system. Like, it's clear that this is how you all are made together. I wonder if that comes from your Palestinian identity, or what part that plays for you all, how those might be mutually informed. I'd love to hear you speak to that.
I think definitely. I mean, I can tell you that my dad's side of the family is very not unique, but unique for us of being very intermingled. Sometimes we say maybe too much with having to know everything. It's kind of, and I will use this in a Jewish per se, or a Jewish word or a Yiddish word, being a yenta, being in everybody's business. Where in some aspect I everybody wanted to know completely what's happening, right? And I think that for us sisters, we know everything that's going on with everything. Sometimes there's conversations that I will have with the sisters going, and we're like, okay, I don't want to say this again. Let me go ahead and do a family conference call, and let's kind of get together and let's kind of talk about it. So definitely there is a lot of that, but on a systemic perspective, and I think that. I always will have to go historical roots. The land in that perspective, and I will go back to interfaith in a way that it comes back to it. I think that when we look at the monotheistic faiths, they're always, and if you read the books and so on, they are very well interconnected. There is families that we're talking from Adam to all the way to Abraham to Isaac to Ishmael. Everything was togetherness. So I think literally the fundamental historical aspect of it, I think it started within that region. And it is very true, because we're not very unique, because I can see other families who are Palestinians who are from that background. And also I would have to say some of my friends who are very much Israeli Jews that have the same kind of formality. So I think it's the land itself that brings that up in us, and I think it just kind of flows in our veins, and it's kind of very unique, and it's kind of cool, because I think that when I look from a Western perspective, I'm like, I don't understand, how can you not speak to your siblings? Like, how do you not know this, and how did you not? I'm like, I know from pretty much. I live away 7 hours away, and I know pretty much everything that's going on when I'm not there. So I don't get it, like, what's going on, right? So literally, we also know that Eastern religions are very much are into each other, and when you look at Asian perspective, that's kind of very much is in their blood as well. So it's kind of like really interesting. Catholicism is the same way. So I don't know. I think it's the land. I have to say it's the land. That's where I'm gonna stop. Definitely the land that flows like the Nile, right?
And I'll add to that, growing up here in the West, I was told repeatedly by friends and people that were welcomed into our home that, oh, what you guys have is just so cool. You guys are so connected. And I didn't realize that then again, that special bond that we had was truly so special. Looking at it as an adult now, it's like, yeah, we live in a place and in a society where individualism is first and foremost, and there's not this sense of collectiveness. And so we always talk about our Arab side of the family as just being so welcoming, and that there's no such thing as a stranger in the Middle East, because everybody will open their door and share their food and give you the shirt off their back. And that's truly something that has been taught down to us, and it's how we show up. We have a tradition in our family where we get together on Sundays and have a family meal together. And a lot of times Layla is parenting my children and I'm parenting her children, and we're feeding each other's children, and just that collective initiative that truly comes from that Palestinian heritage, definitely.
Just this morning, I encountered a new song that's coming up for me as I'm hearing you all describe the land and the relationships, and I wanted to share an excerpt of it. It's called The Land Remembers, and it's by a Native American group called Throne, an artist named Throne, and the song begins by saying, "We are made of the earth, we are shaped by the land. Before walls there was home, before borders there was belonging, before others there was us. The land remembers, we called this place home. The land remembers us. We come from different journeys, but we're all children of the same mother, so our roots have grown intertwined." I feel so grateful for these words and for the words that you all have shared in terms of the deep sense of reverence for the land and the sense of interconnectedness that flows from that. I wonder what ways that is an antidote for you. What ways does that serve as medicine for you right now? As Dora, you alluded to, living in these times where there's such hyper individualism, how does this sense of interconnectedness and belonging save you?
That is such a good question, Lauren. I think that through watching the horrors on our phone screens over the last 2+ years now, I have been brought back to so many cultural aspects, and a lot of it being the connectiveness to the land that I never truly understood lived within me. And so I personally have found a new passion for gardening, and I became a member of the community garden at my daughter's elementary school. And I took it a step further. My dad was in Palestine, and I was like, hey, can you go to each of my aunt's gardens and bring seeds from these plants that I remembered? He didn't do that. He just went to the market and got seeds. But nonetheless, seeds from Palestine, and I was adamant. I was like, I'm going to get, all these things to grow in my tiny little garden, and I've learned a lot. I didn't have a very fruitful harvest, but one thing I was so proud of, and I haven't shared this story yet, I plan to do so, is my name being Dora. Not everybody, my family would give me a nickname, Bandora, which means tomato in Arabic. And I started a tomato plant from seed from Palestine, and probably should have started in a greenhouse or something earlier on, because it was way too late in the season. And I was so sure that I would get something out of it. I got one red tomato, and I treasured this bandora, and I took so many photos of it. But it was like this story of resiliency, and I'm like, wow, something that came from Palestine, and even against all the odds, one still made it, and I'm trying to find a poetic way to put this story into a piece that I can share. But definitely, gardening and connecting me back to our roots and the land, that's been huge for me. It's been where I find my comfort and my peace. And then watching, the gardeners in Gaza, just create life and hope when there was little to nothing from the outside looking in, to watch that resiliency live within them, and to know that we share that same lineage, and that the connectedness of all of that. It was so powerful. So again, with all of the immense grief and horror that we've witnessed, there's been so many things that I'm so grateful to have learned through this process as well.
I wanted to ask, what does allyship look like to you all? What are practices of solidarity or bearing witness that we can enact, Lauren and I, as well as encourage our listeners to consider, pursue, and again, educate people in? I think one thing that I experience, particularly in regards to Palestinian efforts for liberation, is confusion that leads to inaction. There is a desire to help, and there is, as you all have pointed out, most of us want the same things. Most major religions preach the same things. And yet we kind of get in our own way toward getting there. So what does it look like to really free up the channels of liberation, stand in solidarity?
So I think it comes down to humanity, right? Storytelling is the heart of all practices. I think that sharing stories that connect individuals, usually that bring us to the fundamentals of who we are as human beings. Sharing resistance and sharing food, music, prayer. All those things. It's as simple as that. Right, we tend to think that it has to be global, and we need to go ahead, as beautiful as Dora had described the plant. It's the root, it's the fundamentals. It's an understanding that adding love and spirituality and having really authentic conversations that kind of bring dignity to everybody at question. And I think that bringing that as a fundamental aspect of making it as simple in an education, that bringing all those things together, because we all love music, we all love food, we all love, there's all those things that actually connect us. So why is all the other noise is necessary not to stand in solidarity?
And I'll say honoring Palestinian voices and letting Palestinians tell their stories and actually have a seat at the table is what I think is a huge piece that's still missing. When you think of the peace plan, I don't even want to call it that, but anything, the UN resolution, all these things that are coming up, and it's like, where are the Palestinians' voices in all of this? So whenever we're hearing those things, I encourage people to ask, like, what do the Palestinians have to say? And if that piece is missing, ask the questions, start the conversations. And I think a community that embraces people's differences, where no one has to choose between belonging and being themselves, I think that's a community when people can truly be seen and feel safe. And that's what is, to me at least, feels like is missing still at this time, where, again, you mentioned, Hannah, that people want to, and a lot of people have been, have risen to the times, have met the times with action. But there are a lot of people that are still very much in the process of learning and observing. And I would just encourage all of those people, you may have the time. People in Gaza, people in Palestine, people in Sudan, people in Congo, they don't have it. We need to meet the times with action. And so follow the Palestinian voices, let them be the leaders. They know what they need best. And yeah, I think that's where the deep spiritual growth happens and actually takes root.
Layla, any closing thoughts from you?
Just that our voice is our most powerful tool. So to use your voice, get out there and speak and stand up for not just the Palestinians, but all the injustices in the world.
Thank you. This image came to mind as you were all sharing that I want to share with you, which is of the three sisters in many Native American traditions, the corn, beans, and squash. They all grow together in symbiotic relationship. When you plant those crops together, they all grow stronger together and they bear more fruit. And so I want to thank you for being three sisters who today on the show have embodied for us so beautifully what it is to be in this beautiful symbiotic relationship where your gifts and your stories are interwoven and bear so much good fruit for one another and also for so many others, including us in this space today and for our listeners. So thank you for your presence and for sharing your time and your wisdom with us.
Agreed.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of A Soulful Revolution. You'll find links to follow our guests and the resources they shared in the show notes. As always, A Soulful Revolution is entirely made possible by listeners like you. If you like what you heard today, please consider becoming a paid subscriber on Substack or sending us an appreciative gift on Buy Me a Coffee. Your solidarity helps us to bring more conversations like this into the world, and we're grateful. Our theme music was created by Richard Ashe, Andy McGantz, and Ben Schreiber, with production by Richard Ashe for Plus Ultra Audio. A Soulful Revolution is produced by Stephanie Whitehouse of SPW Design Media. We'll see you next time, Soulful Revolutionaries.